Good morning, everyone. This is Alan getting back to you with the second part of our second video lecture, so consider this 2B, if you will. The first part, 2A, was based on replicating. What I did is based on what we showed you in the original video about the basics of cells, rows, and columns in Excel. We then showed you how you can take some basic contents in any one column or row or group of cells and replicate them, duplicate them, just keep going out, going down, making your life easier instead of having to retype something over and over again. So in our last lesson, I showed you how to take some information in a column, for example, as we see up here, January, and to take it out easily by highlighting it with your mouse and dragging it out once highlighted for another 11 months, and all of the totals were replicated. You didn't have to do any new typing of the formulas. You can change all of the contents if you wish. For example, you can see up here on net income from job, I started out with $1,900 every month, and you can change that to your heart's content as you take it out for a year because you're putting a personal budget together in this case. Okay, and then as you recall, we went way out here and we put in a total column for 2017. Okay, and then we did some totaling. You'll remember that whenever we replicated, all of the cells, unless you tell them otherwise, are going to drag formulas along with them. For example, in this case, you can see way up here in this line, that tells you what's in the cell that you're looking at, the contents of that cell. It says sum L6 through, L7, and place the total here. Okay, when I drag that across, it updated it to M for this month, November, and then N for the month of December. Okay, so that's one of the beautiful parts of Excel, one of many, I might add, and we refer to that as a relative address. So I'm going to type that up here instead of where I have it. A relative address simply means that unless you tell Excel to do otherwise, it's going to assume that if you do any kind of math operation or a formula operation on a number in one place, if you replicate it, it's going to automatically adjust for every column, every row, okay? But you're not stuck with it. I'm going to show you how to override that later. Okay, I'm going to do so by comparing it to a fixed or absolute address. Okay, some people say fixed, some say absolute, so I just want to make sure, even though they mean essentially the same thing, that I type it up there as a contrast, okay? Because I might not want an address to be relative. Okay, now that all had to do with replication, friends. What we're going to do today is, as you can see, I've reloaded the worksheet that we used in the previous lecture as we're starting down the path of earning our first badge and proficiency in Microsoft Excel. And now what we're going to do is we're going to make it pretty. Now remember, as I said before, in business, we need to keep two things in mind. As long as you're not sacrificing accuracy or quality of presentation, it's perfectly okay to take shortcuts. In business, we have to take shortcuts because, of course, time is money. Okay? But we also want to make sure that we make things pretty, right? If a student gives me a presentation, I'm going to subconsciously think a lot more of that presentation if it looks good, if it's pretty, if it sings, if it looks like something that I would expect a consultant of mine to give to me professionally. Okay? So this lecture is going to have to do more with how things appear on the spreadsheet, and we'll have a little more fun with replicating after. Okay, so when we talk about appearances, generally, friends, we're talking about formatting. Okay? The second of these two subjects we're dealing with. I want to remind you of something. Okay, all of these contents you see up here are in cell A1, even though it looks like it goes all the way out to D1. Okay, so if there's nothing in B1, C1, or D1, then anything you type in A1, even if it's really long, is going to bleed over into the following cells to the right, as you can see up here. Okay, if there's something in cell B1, I'm just going to type a number 7 there. Okay, that supersedes. And even though all the contents are still in cell A1, they're not going to appear. Now I'm going to delete that number 7, okay, and let it reappear. Now you'll notice that it's underlined. Okay, so here's where we're going to stop playing with formatting, with making our presentations really pop visually, okay? And there's an awful lot of power here. Now you might notice that this spreadsheet looks a tiny bit different than what I used in video number 1 and video 2A. In the meantime, what I've done is I have upgraded my Mac system to have Excel 2016. This is the same version that's being used on all the PCs at Dean College, so you'll see more consistency between the appearance of these following video spreadsheets and what you will see on your computers at Dean College or on your home computers if you've downloaded Dean's latest systems, okay? That will remove some confusion. Okay, now here's what we're going to do. This is my personal budget for 2017. Let's stop making this look a little slicker, if you will. All right, I'm going to click on my personal budget. All those contents are in cell A4. Let's underline that, okay? Come up here to this bar. You're familiar with it if you've used Microsoft Word, which I think most of you have. I click on that little symbol. You can see that it automatically tells me it's underlined. All right, and the whole contents will underline for you. Now I'm going to go to row 5. I'd like to tell the computer, I'd like to tell Excel, to take everything in row 5 and center it in its column and to underline it, okay? Now I can highlight the individual cells, or I can simply, watch what I do. I'm just going to click on number 5. I'm going to put the cursor in the 5 row, and the whole row, all the way far out to the right, wherever this spreadsheet ends. I think one of my colleagues recently told me it's II. Okay, when you get to Z, it becomes AA, AB, AC, and then it goes to BA, BB, BC. And I believe the last column, we'll check it out later, is II, okay? That's a lot of columns, friends. Okay, so now I'm going to tell it, whatever I tell it now, it's going to do to anything in row 5, I don't care how far to the right it goes. I am going to tell it to do 2 things. Center. How do you center something? Look right there. It says center text. You can overwrite it later. You can supersede it, you can cancel it, you can do whatever you like. Okay, I'm going to choose it, and look what just happened to my column captions. They all are centered now. All right, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to, well, I've got that row highlighted, friends. I'm going to come up here and click on U for underline, and now all my titles, all the way out, look a lot better than they did before. Now, if you've got sharp eyes, you noticed something else. Look at this column right here. I hope that you're seeing the same thing I am, if you've got your screen formatted the way I do. But that cell says total expenses, and that last S is cut off a little bit. Okay, how do I change that? I need to make that column a little wider. Now I can do it, as I showed you the other day, by highlighting the column, right-clicking, and going to column width. I can do it that way. As I keep telling you, however, Excel gives us multiple ways to do the same thing for convenience, and oh, I love convenience. So instead, watch what I do now. I'm going to bring my cursor, see how it's a little cross now. When I place it in a row or a column heading, it's going to change to a little black arrow. But now I'm going to go right to the right edge of column B, and watch what happens to that cursor. Ooh, okay, it became a line with 2 arrows. I am going to left click and hold and drag to the right, and that's going to make the column wider. All right, just a little wider, and now my S is fully visible. Okay, isn't that great? As always, please make sure that you save. Now you'll notice that this says Badging Worksheet 2A, okay? I've given it a new name. I'm going to give it an even better name. Since this is video 2B, I'm going to change the name of this file to Badging Worksheet 2B. All right. Any Shakespeare pundits in here might say, well, it's 2B or not 2B, but we won't go there. I'm going to come up here to File. Now this is basic Microsoft. This works for all Office components. I'm going to click on File, and instead of Save, I'm going to click on Save As, and that's going to let me change the name of this file. Okay, I'm going to give it the name, instead of 2A, let's call this worksheet 2B. There it is. See how it changed? Okay, now let's continue. All right, now, first of all, when I see numbers and they get to be more than 1,000, or they get to be more than 10,000 or 100,000, I like to start seeing commas in there. Okay, it makes things easier on the eyes and on the mind. So I'm going to take everything. Well, I can highlight all the numbers like this. I'm placing the cursor up here. Left click, hold, drag. I can do it like that. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want everything in all these rows. Look what I'm doing. I placed my cursor in that little 6 row. That means everything in row 6. I left click, hold, and drag down. And I'm going to highlight 6 through 21. Okay, whatever I do to format right now is going to happen to all the numbers, all the way to the right. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to Format Cells. You remember that one. We've used it already. I'm going to go to Number. Okay. Now, what I want to do is I want to take decimal places, and I'm not interested in pennies, friends, so I'm going to use that little down arrow, down or up, and reduce it to 0. I don't want to see pennies. I'm going to click in that little box that says 1,000 separated. Every multiple of 1,000 will have commas after the first character. Negative numbers. Do you like to see a minus sign? Do you like to see red? Do you like to see parens, or do you like to see both parens and red? That's my preference. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to click on OK, and all the numbers in all those rows now appear as I like to see them. Okay? All right, now let's do something else. I've got data and I've got formulas. Data, a formula, and a formula, as we discussed in our last lecture. Now, accounting, you're going to take accounting, if you haven't already, in your earliest semesters in the business program here at Dean College. And your accounting professor is going to tell you, you always want to make sure you use lines to tell the reader where you're showing totals. So I'm going to do some underlining. Now, I'm not going to use this underline feature here. Instead, I want to place a line under the entire cell. Up here, it only appeared under the letters, correct? Well, I want to put an underline all the way across, all the way out here for the work that we did. So I'm going to come up here. Okay, bear with me. There it is. I lost it because I just updated my system. I beg your pardon. Bottom border. If you click on the drop down, there are all kinds of borders you can use. Okay? You can put thick bottom borders, top and bottom, left, right. I'm just going to click bottom border. And look what happened. Now there's a border under all of those numbers all the way across. All right, like your accounting professor will tell you, let's stick one under here as well, because we want to do a separate total for all the numbers you see in row 11 through 18. So I do the same thing. I highlight and I click on bottom border. There's a faster way to do what I just did. If you have sharp eyes, you would have seen it. You saw that there was one selection under borders for top and bottom border. Remember, one thing about my recording this for you is that you can pause, play, as long as you keep a copy of my original worksheet, so you can go back to it if you erase numbers or formulas that you really don't want to retype, okay? So always keep copies as you go, and that way you can backtrack if there's an error. Okay, so I encourage you to pause, replay, review, fast forward, whatever you'd like to do with my lecture. But I encourage you to stop and play, experiment, test, and get yourself used to the dynamics of Excel. Okay, so now what do we do next? We're going to do the same thing. We've already calculated the total of all these numbers, and we already replicated it across. So I'm going to do the same thing. This time, what should I do? I'm going to do exactly what I did up here, but instead of two separate borders, I'm going to draw just one by changing my drop-down. So let's highlight total expenses. There we are. I'm going to click on the drop-down for my borders, and I'm going to select top and bottom border. And look, remember, time is money. So I just did in one step what I had to use 2 steps to do back on lines 7 and 8. Isn't that cool? All right, now finally your accounting professor is going to tell you your grand total, in this case the total profit, the difference between your income and your outflow, your expenses, should have not 1 but 2 underlines underneath it. That's basic accounting, basic business. So I'm going to highlight the whole thing for you. Whenever you want to prepare to do something, you highlight it. And anything that's highlighted will be affected by what it is you do. I come up here to my border drop-down. And I'm going to come to bottom double border. That's what accountants like to see. Click on it, left click, and look at that. Now that's a good-looking spreadsheet. Okay. If you wish, you can pause me right now and play around with this a little bit, reformat it, change column width, change number appearance. Okay? All right, very good. Now I'm going to do something else that business persons love to see. Okay, and this is where we're going to address relative versus absolute addresses. Up until now, we've let Excel take all of our cell formula addresses with it, whatever we do. Once in a while, you're not going to want that to happen. Okay, now, business persons love to say, if these are all my expenses, what percent, what piece of the pie do they represent of my total income? What's going to happen to that $24,006? Well, $12,000 is going to go to one expense, $2,400 to another, $1,200. I'd like to know how big a piece of the pie of that $24,006 each one of those expenses represents. And I want to know how big a piece of pie is left for me. I'll do all of that with percentages. Okay, so I'm going to say percent of income. All right. Now you'll notice that it bleeds out of the cell, the column rather. It's a little too narrow. I can address that a few ways. I can grab that right border like before and drag it out a little bit. I could put that on 2 lines if I wanted to, percent of income. I could, excuse me, I could even change the word percent to the percent sign. All right, I'll let you play with those aesthetics yourself. Okay, but what I want to do is I want to take every one of these numbers and express them as a percent of that number. That means dividing each one of them by 24,600 and then multiplying it by 100. You'll remember that percent simply means, it's a fancy way of saying 100th. So by multiplying by 100, it looks more like what we're accustomed to. 24,600, therefore, is 100%. That's the number I'm trying to use as the denominator for every other number underneath it. So let's do that. I'm going to take, now I'm going to hit the plus or the equal sign, either one will work. I'm going to use not my mouse, but my arrow keys. 24,600, you see that it puts 08 there, divided by, I use the same number, 08, and I multiply by 100. All right, 24,600 is 100% of itself. All right, now when it comes to percentages, I do like to see decimals. So what should I do? I'm going to left click on 100 and hold it down and drag all the way down. Let it go. It's highlighted. I'm going to right click and it's going to give me the ability to format. I come down to Format Cells, left click, and I can just up this to 2 decimal places. Now, here we go. That's one way to do it. I'm not going to do it because I want to demonstrate to you that there's another and much easier way to adjust decimal places. That's the only thing I'm changing here. I want everything else as far as how these numbers appear to look the same. What I want to draw your attention to, and I'm going to keep this highlighted now, right? go way up here and see that little symbol? It's got a 0 with a left arrow followed by 2 decimal places. It says increase decimal. Every time I click it, anything in the highlighted area will add 1 decimal place. Okay, watch this. All right, format-wise, that's what I want my percentages to look like. All right, now let's get back to our topic of relative versus fixed address. And I'm just going to click Save for you here. Okay, if I just take that number, actually let's come down and work with this. This is our total rent. What percent is 12,000 of 24,600? Okay, I could hit the equal sign, 12,000. I'm going to divide it. Everything I do is going to be divided by 24,006. Look at the nice pretty highlights that Excel is giving you. Times 100. That's how you would find what percent 12,000 is of 24,006. Okay, my rent represents almost half of my income. All right, now you know I don't like to retype anything, so I'm tempted to grab that number, that little right bottom corner, left click, hold, and drag, and look at that. Oh my God, what a bunch of garbage that is. These numbers are meaningless. Why is that? Well, look at this. 011 divided by 08 is exactly what I wanted to do. When I replicate it down, 012 divided by 09. No, I want to use 012 in my numerator, but I want 08 in my denominator. Excel assumed I wanted a relative address. In this case, I don't. So let's erase all that garbage. I highlight it and hit delete. Okay, now this time I'm going to show you how to use a fixed or absolute address. So it always uses 08 as my denominator. It's going to change the numerator. We're going to leave that as a relative address. How do I do it? All right, come up here to the contents line, and I'm going to put my cursor right before the 8 in 08. That's the number I want to make absolute. And I'm going to insert a character right before the 8. It's a $sign. The $sign is your way of telling Excel that I want this to be a fixed, absolute address. Don't change it. Always use 8. I hit enter. Okay? Now I'm going to grab this. I'm going to drag it and replicate it just like before. Highlight the lower right corner. Hold down the left mouse button. Drag it. Let it go. All right. Now that one number, that's a blank, so I'm just going to delete that. Okay, so my rent is 48.78 of 24,006. Look at the contents in the cell. Now look at this one. It changed the numerator just like I wanted it to. It's a relative address, but it froze the 08 because that $sign is in there. Okay, so all of these numbers are divided by 08 just like I wanted them to be, including the total and including that number. What does this tell me? It tells me that 90% of my income is spent for all those different expenses. I get to keep the other amount, almost 10%. All right. If you have any questions at all about anything that I ever do, please remember that you can contact me at this address, asadams@dean.edu. Okay? Very good. And make sure you put something in the contents line of that email that tells me you're a Dean student with a question about Excel, because I do get an awful lot of junk mail and I don't want to accidentally delete you. Okay, this might be a good chance to pause and play. If not, I'm going to go on. I have 2 more things to cover with you. The first is going to be a mass copying. Okay, now you all know what copying and pasting is from your other experiences in Microsoft. Well, it works here too. Now, you just did your personal budget for 2017. You might say, well, that's last year. Now I want to do one for 2018 as well. Okay, do you have to retype anything at all? You don't have to retype a lot. What you're going to do is this. Okay, let's do 2018. First of all, we're going to make space for it. Okay, now row 21, row 4, that's 18 rows, right? So if you come down here, you want to see this mess down here. We're going to do another problem after. Okay, so I want to insert 18 rows here so I can put my budget right under it. So I'm going to highlight 18 rows. 23 plus 18 is 41, so I'm just going to drag all the way down to 41. Okay, I'm going to come up here where it says in the top toolbar, taskbar I think they call it rather, insert, click on it, left click on rows. It's going to insert all the rows I just highlighted without erasing that little formula, not formula, all that text rather. Okay? Okay, now I've gotten myself a little bit of breathing room, a little space. Now I want to duplicate my 2017 budget and call it my 2018 budget. So I'm going to grab this all the way across. Now I'm going to include my percents, but I want you to be careful of something. I'll demonstrate it to you after. I've highlighted it. I'm going to right click. I'm going to left click, copy. By the way, I could have used this little icon up here as well. Remember, we've got multiple ways to do something. I am going to left click and place my cursor there. That's telling Excel that I want this to be the upper left block of all the cells I just copied once I paste them. You can paste this any way you like in Excel, but I want to paste it right underneath. So I'm going to right click in that cell. I'm going to left click on paste, and look at that. All right, it duplicated everything, including relative addresses. See how it says some C25 and C26? Don't you love it? Okay? All right, very good. Now, this is not 2017 anymore, so I'm going to come up here. I'm going to I'm going to place my cursor on A23 and change that 2017. I'm leading back over it to 2018. Let's come out here and make sure we change our caption as well. It's not total 2017. I click in my contents bar, backspace, and make that 2018 as well. Okay. All right. Net income from job. Well, let's give ourselves a raise. $2,100. And we'll do that for the first 4 months. And then we get a promotion. The boss says, you've got a new position. I'm elevating you in May of this year. You'll now make $22.50 a month after taxes. I'm going to replicate that all the way out to December. Okay, now I'm making income inflow net of $27.6. Now I'm going to cheat a little bit here and assume all my expenses are the same, except one. My landlord says to me, January 1st, I'm raising your rent by $100. Let's not be so severe. Let's make it $1,050. Remember, you've got to take that and replicate it. I'm going to drag it all the way out to December. What's your total rent? $12,050. Look at that. It just updated. Okay. Now, you've got to remember one thing, friends. We made these all divisible by what? Okay? By 0.8. I don't want them all divided by 0.8 anymore. I want them all divided by that number, 0.27. All right, I've got a little change to make here. Okay? That one's fine. This one, watch what I do. I want 0.30, that one's good, the numerator, but I want that number not to be 0.8 anymore. I want to leave the dollar sign because I still want this to be an absolute address, but I'm going to change the 8 to a 27. And I'm going to grab that cell, grab the lower right, and replicate it all the way down. Release. Get rid of that 0. That doesn't belong. And now look at that. Last year I really met out, didn't I? Because of that nice raise and because all my other expenses mostly stayed the same, I am now making, instead of 10% left for me, 17% is left for me. I click Save. Very good. The last thing I want to do with you here today is we're going to do a problem, a brand new problem, using our replicating and formatting skills from the last lecture and from this lecture. Okay, this demonstrates compounding, how compound interest works. Okay, because as Ben Franklin once said, money makes money, and the money makes more money. Okay, the longer you leave money in one place, it's going to grow and grow and grow at a much more rapid rate than simple addition. We'll see how that works. You're going to stick $1,000 today into an investment because let's assume that your niece is very, very young, maybe a newborn, and in 15 or 16 years, you would like to gift her some money toward her college expenses. So you've got $1,000 you're not using. You're going to pocket in an investment that earns 4% every single year. Okay? And it's going to grow. It's going to grow. And every year that it grows, that 4% won't just work on your original 1,000, but on all the balance that's there year after year. That's compounding. So how much will you have at the end of 15 years? That's what we're going to find out. Okay, so let's head up 3 columns. Let's indicate what year it is. Let's indicate the amount of interest that you earn every year. You know, it's going to be 4% of whatever is in there. And let's keep a total of our running balance so we see how our money is growing. Okay, I'm going to save this. I'd like to get a little fancy. This is going to be a nice spreadsheet for myself. So I'd like to center and underline those 3 headings. So I'm going to left click, hold, and drag and highlight all 3 of those. I want to center them. Come up here and click center. And I want to underline them. Come over here, they're still highlighted, and click U. Bam, there it is. Okay. $1,000 is what I'm investing now. Okay? All right. Year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm pretty quick on a keyboard from years of experience, but I don't want to type in 15 numbers. I'm basically also very lazy. So, year 1, I'm going to leave that alone. Year 2, I'm going to say to the computer, take the previous year and add 1 to it. Now, I'm going to grab that cell and do the same thing every year for 15 years. And I'm 2 years short, so let me... All right, now I just made a mistake there. I accidentally clicked where I shouldn't. How do you back out of something? As you're accustomed to with Microsoft, I come up here to that reverse arrow, undo, and it undid it. And now I'm just going to add 2 more years. Okay. All right. And I'm going to put a total here as well. Okay. Now, this time around, because this is my family's money, it's my niece's money, I want to see pennies. Normally in business I do not, but this is personal. So I'm going to left click and hold and drag and highlight all these cells and release. I would like to see 2 decimal places, so I'm going to come up here to that little increased decimal button that we saw before and click it twice. 1. And it didn't work. I'm not sure why. Hold on. Okay, that's a little oddity that I can't explain right now. So, all right, am I going to let that bother me? Of course not. All right, more than one way to skin a cat. I'm going to highlight everything, and by the way, I will look into that and find out why that happened. Highlight everything and right-click. Come down here to Format Cells, left-click. Go to Number, left-click. Decimal places 2, yes. Click on OK. Now, any number I put in any of these gray cells will have 2 decimal places. Now let's do the math. Isn't this easy? You say compound interest, you think, oh, that might be mathematically challenging. No, it's quite easy. It's all multiplicative. Watch how easy we make this. And when you take my finance course, which I certainly hope you will, we'll get into this extensively to see how you can manage your money. I want to find out how much interest I'll make in the first year, now that my $1,000 is sitting there. I hit the equal sign. I use my arrows or my mouse and I come over there and grab that 1,000 and I say how much interest will I make in the first year? Well, it's 4%. So I'm going to click 0.04. Let's try that again. $40. That makes sense. 4% of $1,000 is 40 bucks. So in the first year I'll make 40. I'm going to add that 40 to my initial balance because that's how much I'll have at the end of year one. I highlight 1,000 plus 40. All right. Now I can do that 14 more times. Okay? And I can add it 14 more times. Oh, I'm not going to do that. Let Excel do all the heavy lifting for you. I'm going to replicate that. I'm going to highlight those two lines and replicate them all the way down. Grab the lower right, left click, hold, drag, let go. There it is. Oh, you know what? I forgot my commas. So let's highlight it one more time. Right click, format cells, 1000 separator. Okay, that's how I like to see my numbers. Okay? How much interest did I earn in total? Well, if you started with 1,000 and now you've got 1,894, clearly we made $800.94. Oh, just for kicks, let's put a sum down here. Okay? I can do that by typing =, sum, parens, using my arrows to highlight. Just like that. Or I can do it by an even better shortcut. I can click, see that little sigma up there? That's the capital Greek letter sigma. See where it says auto sum? If my cursor is right there and I click on auto sum, it highlights my numbers for me, or I can highlight them myself. B52 to B66, no matter how you do it, you get $800.94. Okay? I'm going to save that. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a good point to cut off this third lecture, which I've numbered lecture 2B. So I'm going to stop now. I'm going to invite you to play with this, to experiment with this. Try replicating, try formatting, and we're lining you up for our second proficiency exam. Before we do that, I'm going to insert a supplemental video that will be very brief to show you how to set up a basic worksheet. Okay, more on that in a few moments. This is where our lecture for today ends, and I thank you very much for your kind attention, and good luck in practicing with all of this information. Bye-bye.